Hey everybody, happy Friday. What's quickly turning into Friday evening to you all. I just wanted to leave you with a few things with feedback for the class as I've been working through all the assignments and giving feedback to students. I've realized that there's been a lot of things that have come up consistently across the assignments that I feel that would be best just give you guys a video and let you guys know exactly what I'm looking for and talking about. One of the first things is being able to cite your scriptures. That's a big thing. And those of you that did it, great. And those of you that are still learning and adapting, we still got time. Again, you didn't get docked for that. And also using complete sentences. I apologize for that because, again, I realized in the tutorial video that I had posted that I had used short forms in order to answer the questions, which, again, was a little bit misleading on my part. My intention with that was to be brief, and for brevity's sake, I shortened a lot of things. And so I apologize if I led you astray with that. But I do want to make mention that, yeah, we do expect full sentences with all your observations. And so if you did both, absolutely great. But if you're still working on it, again, you still have time to be able to make some adjustments with that. That being said, as you work through the questions, the first thing with characters and characterization, excellent job. Everybody identified the main characters with God and Noah, but also one of the main characters being humanity. And the big thing with identifying main characters, and it's also important to note other characters as well, some of the minor characters, but especially with the main characters. And the big thing to identify with main characters is, first of all, what's being said and how the character is being described, specifically if the narrator prescribes them or describes them as something. And then also to see what are their actions and what do their actions have to say about the particular individual that is engaging in those actions. And so that being said, and to also note the characters and the way they're being contrasted either with one another or with their particular context. And so that being said, and moving on to conflict, one of the big ways we're able to identify conflict consistently is to be able to identify who are the main characters. Again, this is kind of a great way to prove as a litmus test if there's a character that you're forgetting because they're a big part of the conflict, then go ahead and throw them as a main character if you hadn't listed them, or to be able to describe some of their actions as a main character. Because oftentimes the way narrators will do it is that the way that they'll demonstrate a conflict is by having a conflict between two characters, either a character, individual characters, two groups of characters, a group, and a singular character. As you guys will see a little bit later on in you guys' assignment with Moses, there's going to be a conflict between a particular individual and a group of people that happen to be oppressing God's people. So to be able to note that for future assignments. But then there's a second way that there's a conflict identified, and that's between a character and their circumstances. That we have conflict between characters, but then also characters in conflict with their circumstances. And this is going to be more true of the case of Abraham. That in Abraham's case, that what we find is that God is calling Abraham to go out from his country, and with that there's an issue is that Abraham's old and his wife's barren. And so that poses a particular problem or a conflict for both Abraham and for God. And then answering how does that conflict get resolved? And so that's one of the ways we're able to track and keep track of the way God is at work in a particular narrative, which is also something that we're going to want to keep track of, especially when God intervenes in a conflict. And so that moves us on to point of view, which is going to be important to identify contrast and conflict, because point of view will often help us to identify what is the author trying to communicate to us by way of contrast. That the differentiation between characters and their circumstances, between characters and one another, how they're being contrasted, again, like is the case with Noah and humanity. That we're able to see one of the things that the author is trying to get across to us is this importance of God's redemption of the righteous, of those who are obedient and faithful to God, and how God comes to redeem them and deliver them in a context of unfaithfulness and trying to motivate us towards being faithful to God as well as we live in our own times. And so again, seeing that kind of contrast helps us to identify what are the values and what are the important things that the author wants us to know. And so that will move us on over to the last bit, which is how do the stories build on one another? And looking at a particular passage like we do for each of our story of scripture is going to be important to identify and work backwards. And what I mean by that is using Noah's story as an example, is that looking at the creation narrative and seeing what's there. Because we do see, and I brought this up in class today, it's that you do have the same word that's used in Genesis 1 that's used in Genesis 9, where God's telling Noah and his family, be fruitful and multiply. That you kind of see how this progression happens as Adam and Eve rebel against God. And that we see part of the rebellion, the impact of the rebellion starts splitting relationships between family members, and that's reflected in Cain and Abel. And as that works its way out into all of humanity corrupting themselves, and how Noah, the singular individual who God preserves, who God works alongside and works with, in contrast, again, to the characters that preceded him. And so we see here how, again, in Genesis 9, how God starts all over again and brings back this theme, and to see how God is building and how these stories are connected to one another. And the reason why I bring that up isn't so much that you guys can answer just the way I did or try to make you answer the way I think you should answer, but really helping you to identify what are the important elements in the story, and to be able to identify this as a consistent and logical story that progresses with a consistent progression throughout, and how the story builds on one another. So by the time we're at the end of the story, we can see in retrospect how God has worked out redemption through these characters and in humanity itself. And so this last thing that I do want to leave you with is in your reading and reflection, that, and this is just true with all communication, but one of the things I do want to encourage you to do is anytime you have the opportunity to share a story or an example from your own life, I encourage you to do so. That it's going to be powerful, powerful, powerful in communicating, not just to me, but whatever audience you're speaking to, whether it be at church, with a group of kids, with a group of your friends, with a family member, with a friend, drinking tea or coffee, whatever, that you're sharing something from your own personal life that drives home the point of what you're trying to say. And so again, do feel free that when the opportunity affords itself to share part of your own story on your assignment, again, to kind of further push not only your own communication skills, but then also being able to further elaborate on what it is that you're trying to say, again, which works across every avenue and discipline, regardless of your major. And so if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you guys need me to work with you on any particulars about your assignments, please let me know. You guys did a really good job. So many of you knocked this out of the park. And if you feel like you may not have, there's just a couple of these tweaks really that are going to really make your work shine. And so this is stuff that you are able to take with you wherever you go, and whatever line of work that God sends you into, whether it's in or outside of church, whether it's to nonprofits, whether it's to schools, whether it's regardless of the community, that the way we read and understand stories and identifying the important points, it's going to be a valuable gift wherever you are and wherever you go. And so again, if I could be of any help to you, please email me, contact me. Let's set up a time to meet up and to be able to talk. And so I hope to see you guys soon. Have a great weekend, and yeah, keep working hard. See ya.